Secretary Mayorkas' actions have forced our hand. We cannot allow this border crisis to continue. We cannot allow fentanyl to flood across our border, our criminals to waltz in undeterred. And we cannot allow a cabinet secretary with no regard for the separation of powers and the rule of law to remain in office.
The Constitution gives Congress the power to impeach federal officials for treason, bribery, and high crimes and misdemeanors. That is a high bar. And we do not have that. This is revenge impeachment.
Members of the House Homeland Security Committee debate the fate of Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I'm Ellison Barber in for Gadi, Schwartz, and this is Stay Tuned Now. Right now, House Republicans are pushing forward with an attempt to impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas over his handling of the situation at the U.S. Mexico border. You are taking a live look as members of the committee debate two articles of impeachment. They accuse Mayorkas of breaching public trust and willfully ignoring the law. Sources tell NBC News a full House vote to impeach him could come as soon as next week. In a statement, Mayorkas said the, quote, false accusations do not rattle him and do not divert him from doing his job. Top Democrats on the committee echoed that sentiment, calling the impeachment a political stunt by extreme MAGA Republicans. Today's hearing follows a year-long investigation by Republicans as states grappled with a record number of migrants over the past year. 302,000 people were encountered at the U.S. Mexico border in December alone. All of it putting a strain on cities as close as Eagle Pass, Texas, and as far away as New York City. Before we get into tonight's impeachment vote, let's go to our correspondent on the ground at the southern border. NBC News correspondent David Noriega joins us now from Eagle Pass, Texas. So, David, describe to us what you have been seeing there at the border.
Hey, Ellison. So, yeah, this is the border right behind me. That's the Rio Grande. And in terms of migrant crossing, things have actually been pretty quiet, especially compared to last month, December, which broke records in terms of the number of people crossing into the U.S. to seek asylum. Nevertheless, you can still feel a lot of the national level political tension playing out here in Eagle Pass, which has become a flashpoint for some of these conflicts between, on the one hand, Republican Governor Greg Abbott and the Biden administration, and more generally between Republicans and Democrats. Just to give you an example, all through today, we've been seeing people kind of trickle in who are here in advance of what's expected to be a convoy of self-described patriots. These are right-wing Trump supporters who are due to arrive at the border later this week and are here to protest what they describe as the Biden administration's open border policies. There does, however, seem to be some confusion around when that rally is actually going to happen. That's why we've been seeing people show up, 5 days earlier than the organizers said the rally is supposed to happen. So it's not clear to me that that will necessarily play out the way the organizers want. Nevertheless, even with, a relatively calm, relatively quiet border in terms of actual migration activity, this is still a flashpoint for the kinds of political tension that we're seeing on the national level, and especially right now in Washington, D.C. Allison?
Yeah, you mentioned D.C. The president was speaking with reporters outside of the White House today, and he called on Congress to up his power when it comes to the border. Let's listen to some of what President Biden had to say, and then we'll talk right after.
All I can do, just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work for us.
So President Biden has said he would shut down the border if Congress sends him a bill with emergency authority. Break that down for us, David. Is that something that is realistic? I mean, could he do that?
Right. So people keep using this phrase, shut down the border, without really defining exactly what it means. And the question of whether it's realistic or not really depends on what that means. So with the big caveat that we haven't actually seen any text for this proposed bill in the Senate, the reporting that we have seen suggests that what that idea refers to of shutting down the border is a new expulsion authority that would allow the president, if there is a certain number of migrant apprehensions between ports of entry, within a given day or within within a given week to expel those migrants who cross illegally between ports of entry without allowing them to seek asylum. So it's essentially shutting down the asylum system between ports of entry, which is not the same thing as shutting down the entire border. That's very similar to what was already in place under both Trump and the early part of the Biden administration with Title 42, which was only in place because of the state of emergency declared federally due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So we've already seen a program very much like that in place. And it's important to note, Ellison, that that did not actually stop people from trying to cross the border. In fact, apprehensions went up during the time that Title 42 was in place. Another really big point here is that Title 42 was only able to be implemented because the U.S. government, both under Trump and under Biden, had extensive cooperation from the Mexican government. If you're going to push asylum seekers back into Mexico, you need cooperation from Mexican authorities on the local, state, and federal levels. And there is no indication right now that any kind of agreement has been reached between the Mexican and U.S. governments allowing for this kind of authority to be implemented. And that's not something that you really hear very much the way this is being talked about in Washington. Ellison?
NBC News correspondent David Noriega at the U.S. Mexico border there. Thank you. Turning now to the impeachment hearing taking place in Washington. I want to bring in Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles. So, Ryan, this impeachment markup hearing, it's been going on all day. What is the latest and what are the key points from today?
Well, this exercise is expected to go well into the night, but at the end of it, the outcome is pretty much known, and that's that along party lines, Republicans will report out 2 articles of impeachment against the Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas, and they accuse him of willfully ignoring the law, and they believe that the policies of the Biden administration have led to a record 8.6 million migrant crossings since President Biden took office, which is a record. And they believe that Mayorkas is mainly to blame. The purpose of this for Republicans is to draw attention to the fact that they believe that the Biden administration has fallen short in this area. But, you know, Democrats feel much differently. They believe this is just a political stunt designed to force support for Republicans and potentially Donald Trump in the 2024 election, because immigration, of course, is one of the key issues that Republicans care most about. Allison.
Yeah, that was going to be sort of my next question, Ryan. I mean, when you look at just the numbers and the reality in the House versus the Senate, you have a Democratic-controlled Senate that is expected, barring some Herculean change of course, to acquit Mayorkas here. And so for Republicans, is the point of this just to try to bolster their position heading in to the election? Or do they think that there could actually be something that is tangible or more concrete of a change at the end of all of this?
Well, Ellison, we'd be naive to think that under any circumstance that impeachment is a legal process. It is a political process by design. So there's always going to be politics associated with it. But you're absolutely right about the reality of the situation compared from the House to the Senate. In the House, it's a simple majority in order to impeach someone. Republicans have enough votes for that. But in the Senate, it requires a 2/3 majority to convict. And it would be a conviction that would ultimately lead to Alejandro Mayorkas being booted from office. There's absolutely no appetite for that in the Senate. So what this really becomes is a messaging exercise for Republicans to try and point out all the problems they believe that exist at the border and to blame the Biden administration through Mayorkas for that failure. Whether or not that resonates with voters, whether voters look at this as just being political and not really about the substance, that remains to be seen. But there's no doubt that this will be a key part of the 2024 election.
Yeah. And Ryan, as all of this is happening, there is a bipartisan border bill where there's been incredibly fruitful discussions, or at least it appears that way, around that between the administration, Mayorkas, as well as members of the U.S. Senate. What is the status of that border bill?
Yeah, it's quite the juxtaposition, isn't it? Allison, you've got on one side House Republicans complaining that nothing's being done as it relates to the border. And then on the Senate side, you actually have Republicans and Democrats trying to hash out some sort of an agreement on a package of policies that they think will stem the crisis. There is hope. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said today that they're close. They're almost to the finish line, but there is still work to be done. So we could see legislative text by the end of this week and perhaps even a vote in the Senate. It would require 60 votes in order to pass, but there's still a ton of skepticism on the House side. They seem to be moving the goalposts as it relates to this border package, now saying that Basically, they just think President Biden can solve this problem all on his own, which is a much different messaging than we've heard from them prior to this point. So it seems very unlikely that it could pass the House, even if it passes the Senate, in part because Donald Trump, who does want this to be a campaign issue, is putting an immense amount of pressure on Republicans to turn this deal aside, as opposed to putting it into law and maybe perhaps giving President Biden a win.
So many threads here. Ryan Nobles, thank you so much for breaking all of that down for us. We appreciate you and your reporting. And tonight, President Biden announced that the U.S. has decided how to respond to the drone strike that killed 3 U.S. soldiers in Jordan on Sunday. The attack carried out by Iranian-backed militants in Syria took the lives of Sergeant William Rivers, Specialist Kennedy Sanders, and Specialist Breonna Moffett. Their families now sharing memories. Here's what Specialist Sanders' mother had to say.
She enjoyed life to the fullest. You know, she was just a ray of sunshine for anyone that came in contact with her.
President Joe Biden has vowed to hold the militants responsible for the attack, but the question stands, what exactly will that look like? NBC News senior White House correspondent Peter Alexander has this report.
Tonight, President Biden says he's decided how he'll respond to that deadly drone attack on U.S. troops by an Iranian-backed militia.
Yes.
The president today pressed by NBC's Gabe Gutierrez if he holds Iran responsible for the attack.
I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it.
The commander-in-chief's decision comes shortly after a U.S. official says the president spoke with members of his national security team this morning, following this Situation Room meeting Monday, where the president and his top aides analyzed several retaliatory options the Pentagon had presented to him. President Biden's under pressure to respond after U.S. troops were killed by Iranian-backed militant groups for the first time since the Israel-Hamas war began in October, the latest in more than 160 attacks by militias against bases with Americans during that time. The president has ordered limited strikes in response, but they have not deterred the Iranian-backed groups.
What will be different this time?
We'll see. Sunday's attack at a remote outpost in Jordan, Tower 22, while U.S. troops were sleeping. The Pentagon is examining whether the explosive enemy drone got past air defenses in a moment of confusion when a U.S. drone was also landing. The president today speaking to the families of the 3 service members killed, 46-year-old Sergeant William Rivers, Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, just 24, and 23-year-old Sergeant Breonna Moffett. Her parents devastated by the loss.
If we knew what we know now, we would have just said, I love you so much. Just make sure that she knew that she wasn't alone, and that we love her.
Tonight, Republican critics say President Biden has not done enough to confront Iran and to deter the attacks.
They're doing nothing that is meaningful, and now we have more Gold Star families because of it, and it's infuriating.
And joining me now is NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. Colonel Jacobs, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it as always. Let's dive right in here because the president, as we just heard in Peter's reporting, he says a decision has been made and the U.S. will retaliate. There are reports out there that the response will happen over the course of several days and include strikes on multiple targets. What do you think retaliation should look like? What will it look like? And if you were in the Situation Room and a part of the team advising President Biden, what military options would you advise the president to take or present him with?
Well, up till now, the administration has been very measured in its retaliation. It's tried to be proportional, and that hasn't worked at all. There are a lot of people who said from the very beginning that proportional responses do not work in this case. There's a wide variety of targets, both in the area and indeed including targets inside Iran. The likelihood of attacking Iran is very, very low. The United States still does not want to engage Iran, even though Iran is not very happy about the prospect of fighting with the United States, and an attack on Iran will not necessarily widen the war. For those who are critical of widening the war, the likelihood is that there will be multiple attacks on specific targets that have already been identified. There's a large target list that the Pentagon has presented to the National Security Council, and targets were selected from that. This may continue over a period of time. Over time, retaliatory strikes are going to be most effective if they're not proportional and if they try very, very hard to ensure that the militias that are supported by Iran are decimated and cannot continue to attack American interests. Nevertheless, because there are so many militias that are supported by Iran, we can expect that that there will be continued attacks on American interests, and it's possible that only something really significant, let's say putting ships so that American ships, so that there can't be any deliveries of any kind to Iran, that they may make a difference. But right now we can only expect limited attacks on militias in the area, Ellison.
The U.S., as you said, they have carried out targeted strikes specifically against Houthi rebels in Yemen. The U.S. said those were to deter them from continuing to attack commercial ships in the Red Sea. It does not seem like that they have been deterred by those retaliatory targeted strikes at all. As you were touching on there, we do talk a lot about the risks of going too far and the worries about a wider regional war. Do you think right now there is a risk of the administration in the United States not going far enough here?
Yes, I mean, that's the criticism. There's an argument that says that an attack on Iranian soil may be more effective and will not widen the war significantly because Iran is not particularly interested in engaging the United States. And there's criticism on both sides of the aisle that the administration has not gone far enough and may not go far enough. This is particularly significant in an election year when the Republicans are going to heap opprobrium on the administration for not deterring either Iran or its proxies, and that if they don't do that, that there will continue to be attacks on American and allied interests. This is going to be very, very important in an election year when the two principal attacks on the administration will be its actions on the border on the one hand and its inability to deter attacks on American interests in the Middle East. Ellison.
Before we let you go, I do want to ask you, Colonel Jacobs, about your reaction to this undercover IDF raid that happened at a hospital in Jenin that's in the West Bank. Some IDF soldiers in that process, they say they were foiling a terror attack, but they were reportedly dressed as medical workers when they went into that hospital armed. Is that ever appropriate behavior for a military? And secondly, when people do talk about regional stability, does this moment in the West Bank and the response that the Arab world might have to it, will that factor into the United States' actions when it comes to this drone retaliation, if you will?
Well, these were probably special operations forces. And here's the argument on the battlefield. As long as you're fighting the enemy and they're shooting back at you, then you need to close with and kill or capture the enemy. But once the enemy is under your control, you need to capture them. And there's a cogent argument that says that capturing enemy is much better in any case because you're liable, if not likely, to get some information that you won't be able to get from the enemy if he's dead. In this particular case, you could make a cogent argument that they should have captured these people instead of killing them, especially in the environment in which they're in. But these are very fraught and difficult times. It's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to hold the IDF back from completing what Netanyahu says is his ultimate goal. And it's not necessarily to get the hostages back, but it's instead to destroy Hamas so it won't be able to attack Israel again, Ellison.
Colonel Jack Jacobs, thank you as always. We so appreciate your analysis and insights and also your time. Thank you. That hospital raid in the West Bank, it is only fueling concerns that the war between Israel and Hamas might be taking a step backwards. Today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he will not release thousands of Palestinian prisoners or withdraw Israeli troops from Gaza, despite a potential hostage deal just hammered out in Paris yesterday. Hamas confirmed they are reviewing that proposal. It includes a 60-day pause in fighting and the release of hostages. But that temporary ceasefire remains a sticking point for both sides. Hamas has previously demanded a permanent ceasefire in Gaza. All of this comes as we are learning White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is scheduled to meet tomorrow with Israel's Minister of Strategic Affairs. Meanwhile, thousands of people in Gaza, they remain caught in the middle of this war. Large crowds of displaced people were seen fleeing parts of Khan Yunis yesterday, where Israel has increased its fighting in recent weeks. And in Rafah, children are seen wearing suits used primarily during the COVID-19 pandemic because they don't have enough regular clothes to protect them from the weather. An increase in illnesses and diseases has also hit Gaza hard, making it difficult for hospitals there to keep up. NBC News correspondent Hala Gourani joined a flight evacuating critically ill refugees from the Gaza Strip. Hala?
The war in Gaza is about to enter its 5th month, and behind the casualty number that we hear most often, that almost 27,000 people have been killed, according to the Ministry of Health there, there's another number, the number of injured, and those who are critically ill, unable to access care. And this is why countries like the UAE are organizing mercy flights like this one, where they retrofit commercial airliners, in some cases collapsing seats to accommodate stretchers for patients that are unable to walk unaided and who need these hospital bed installations inside of flights. Now, we are at Al Arish Military Hospital in Egypt, about a 45-minute drive from the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. Some of these patients on lists, whose names appear on lists, have been waiting for evacuation for several months. They are now seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. It's about a 4-hour flight between Al Arish and Abu Dhabi, and from there they will be taken to hospitals in the UAE for further treatment. Some of the people here have delayed their care for so long that the road ahead for them will be extremely challenging. This is happening against the backdrop of renewed hopes for a ceasefire, some sort of longer-term ceasefire, and that will certainly be welcome news for the tens of thousands of people who are in need of critical medical care, just like the patients behind me on this flight.
Hala Gourani, our thanks to Hala for that report. Don't go anywhere because we are just getting started here. California and the Pacific Northwest are due for some heavy rain in the next few hours. We will have that forecast for you. And it's like something out of a sci-fi movie. The first human has been implanted with a Neuralink brain chip. That's coming up, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Here are some of the stories happening out west that we're following. Crews recovered the body of a man who fell through the ice on Settlement Canyon Reservoir in Utah yesterday. Officials there say he got trapped in freezing waters and died after saving a woman who'd also fallen in. The woman was sent to a nearby hospital for cold exposure, and she is expected to recover. This is the second death and third rescue effort within a year at that reservoir. Anchorage, Alaska hit its record for its earliest arrival of 100 total inches of snow. The city got 16 inches of snow during a 3-day storm this weekend. That is a ton of snow, even for a state like Alaska. It's so much snow that the roofs of 3 commercial buildings actually collapsed. Officials are now urging residents to start shoveling to keep their homes intact. Anchorage is also on track to break its all-time record of 134.5 inches of snow. They hit that in 2011. And in northeastern Colorado, an Amtrak train derailed yesterday after hitting a semi-truck that was blocking a railroad crossing. 3 people were hurt, including a train worker who has serious, potentially life-threatening injuries. The truck was carrying milk, and right now it's unclear why it was ever on the tracks. 10 million people across the West Coast are under flood alerts tonight as another set of storms are set to roll through. And yes, they are fueled by atmospheric rivers. This one in particular is nicknamed the Pineapple Express. Tomorrow, California will be drenched with heavy rainfall and battered by strong winds and even snow, mimicking last year's winter that brought dozens of atmospheric rivers to that region. Thunderstorms are a possibility as well, and the Bay Area National Weather Service is reminding residents, particularly golfers in this case, to quickly find shelter if lightning strikes. Our NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns is here to tell us more about what we can expect in the coming days. Bill, good evening.
Well, good evening to you, Ellison. And we have two storms coming into California. Both will be considered atmospheric rivers. This first one, though, this is a good old-fashioned Pineapple Express atmospheric river. And all that really fancy term means is that this storm that's powerful, that's off the coast, if we track the moisture from it, where it's drawing the moisture from all the way down into the tropics, it starts in Hawaii. So that's why we call these a Pineapple Express. It's just a type of atmospheric river. And by the way, even the east coast of the U.S. can have atmospheric river events. It's not just exclusive to the West Coast. It really just means when a storm is powerful enough that it pulls that humid air out of the tropics to northern latitudes. So here's our forecast for the atmospheric river. We actually have an intensity scale for these. It goes 1 to 5. 5, this red, that would be exceptional. That would be the strongest. That would be, significant impacts. This one's kind of in the middle of the road. Coastline of Oregon may get some power outages, some damaging winds, and also waves. Northern Oregon coastline all the way through Washington State, same. California, this one looks kind of like your typical areas of rain. It's moving through pretty quickly and just a little bit windy. So here's the timing of it. This is 5 p.m. on Wednesday, starting to pour all of Northern California coastal areas, beginning to move into the central coast. San Francisco, right around the evening rush hour, the highest winds and heaviest rain for you. And by the time we get to Thursday, it all moves inland. So it's actually progressing pretty quickly. Showers behind it, but not the heavy torrential rains and also the damaging wind gusts. By the time we get to Friday, this storm system's all the way moving into the Four Corner region. So obviously we're going to have winter storm warnings to high elevations with the flood threats for areas of not just Northern California, San Francisco and Monterey, but now we even have them issued in and around areas from San Diego. Los Angeles, by the way, not in the flood watch right now, and the mountainous areas have a winter storm warning, or actually a winter storm watch, but we'll have to wait and see if that forecast changes tomorrow as that storm approaches. Rainfall amounts up to about 6 inches max. Most areas in California from the central coast northwards will be in that 1 to 3 inch range. Mountains could be a little bit higher than that. As far as the winds go, and remember, this will probably be the highest impacts. Northern California and areas of Oregon will probably have thousands of people without power come tomorrow night into Thursday morning. Many of the major cities will be in the 40 to 50 mile per hour range. In Chico, 56. That's the possibility of maybe some minor power outages. And snowfall totals, this will be the central portions of the Sierra get the heaviest, 3 feet in the peaks, but we actually need the snow. We're actually way behind on snowfall this year, Ellison. So again, mostly this first one is beneficial. It's that second one coming up this weekend. That's the one that could cause more significant problems. We'll talk more about that during the week.
Bill Cairns, thank you. Coming up, American-made guns are getting into the hands of Mexico's drug cartels. How the Mexican government is looking to hold the U.S. responsible. But first, you gotta see this. Today, NASA released mesmerizing photos of spiral galaxies taken on the James Webb Space Telescope. The photos not only show their highly detailed arms filled with blue stars, but their centers that sometimes contain supermassive black holes. These photos were released as part of NASA's longstanding BANGS program, which is supported by over 150 astronomers across the globe. You might say they are out of this world. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. In the Maldives, parliament turned absolutely chaotic. We are talking members fighting, throwing punches, and pulling hair. It all started when the opposition party refused to approve 4 new cabinet ministers. Members also started blowing a toy trumpet right into the speaker's ear. The U.S. is pulling back on sanctions relief for Venezuela after the country's court blocked opposition leader Maria Corina Machado from running for president. Mining companies now have 2 weeks to start winding down operations in Venezuela. Transactions were previously allowed by the U.S. after President Nicolas Maduro pledged last year to hold free elections in 2024. A woman swimming in Australia's Sydney Harbour was attacked by a shark. She went to the hospital with a leg injury and is currently in stable condition. You often hear of shark attacks in the country, but they're extremely rare in this particular harbor. The last attack there was in 2009. And if you get lost in Paris during the 2024 Summer Games and don't speak French, don't worry, there's an app for that. Public transport agents will have AI-powered devices to help visitors navigate the metro. The device can translate 16 different languages. Now let's head to Beijing. Earlier today, American and Chinese officials met there to discuss the flow of fentanyl into the U.S. The U.S. has long maintained that the precursor chemicals to make fentanyl come from China and that China does not do enough to stop it. The head of the White House delegation at the high-level talks told NBC News that the two sides had, in their words, frank and honest discussions about the drug crisis. NBC News foreign correspondent, Janice Mackey-Frayer has this report.
Ellison, with the opioid crisis devastating communities across the U.S., this is the first direct collaboration in years from China. A delegation of U.S. officials from Homeland Security, the Justice Department, the State Department, meeting face-to-face with Chinese officials from law enforcement and drug control agencies. The cooperation is aimed at stemming the flow of chemical precursors from Chinese companies going to Mexico that are being used to make the illicit fentanyl that's killing so many Americans. Now, to be clear, fentanyl as a substance, as a finished substance, was banned by China in 2019. And since then, U.S. officials say that direct shipments of it to the U.S. have effectively stopped. But it has forced the criminal networks to change their supply chains, where now the precursors or ingredients are bought and sold online. They're shipped to Mexico, where they're synthesized into the fentanyl that's being smuggled into the U.S. Now, there's been cooperation between the U.S. and China on this issue before, but it was derailed by political tension. I sat down with the head of the U.S. delegation, Jen Daskal. She's Deputy Homeland Security Advisor to the White House.
A huge issue for the United States. It is a huge crisis that we need to address, and we know that working with China is an essential part of any solution.
Getting Chinese officials on board hasn't been easy. China called off talks in 2022 after Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, and they had sputtered since 2020 when the Trump administration sanctioned 2 police labs for links to alleged rights abuses. Both of those labs, including the National Narcotics Lab, which tracks new chemical precursors, it's a facility we were given rare access to, were removed from the U.S. entity list after President Biden met with China's President Xi Jinping. Now, the big question in all of this, will it make any difference? From China's perspective, the fentanyl crisis is a U.S. demand problem. A senior Chinese narcotics official told me in an interview, quote, "I understand there's doubt in the U.S. of China's sincerity." Now, relations between the two sides have stabilized in recent months, and both sides have said that doing nothing is no longer an option. But even on an issue as personal to Americans as the fentanyl crisis, it does still carry the risk that things could become derailed by geopolitics. Allison?
U.S. gun manufacturers are facing a first-of-its-kind lawsuit from Mexico's government, who's trying to hold them accountable for the large number of American guns that end up in the hands of cartel members. Last week, a federal appeals court ruled the $10 billion lawsuit can proceed against 6 of the biggest gun makers in America, including Smith & Wesson, Glock, and Ruger. Mexico is accusing those companies of aiding and abetting an illegal trafficking network of weapons from gun stores here in the U.S. to Mexican cartels. Mexico is 3rd in the world when it comes to gun-related deaths, despite having very strict gun laws. The country itself only has 1 gun store, so most of its weapons are smuggled in. And a recent U.S. government investigation found 85% of guns at cartel crime scenes are traced back to American gun stores. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo joins me now on set with more. So, Stephen, what does Mexico have to prove in this lawsuit? And from where things are right now, what legal experts have said, do they have a strong case here?
Yeah, a very good question. I asked the attorney representing Mexico about that, and he says they are very eager for the discovery phase so they can present their evidence that these guns are coming from the United States. Not always easy to do because a lot of times the serial numbers are scraped off. But if you just think about it, it would be like a vehicle. You can take off a license plate, but you'll know if it's a Toyota. Like, it's not that big of a mystery. That's one of their points. But as you mentioned, the U.S. intelligence agency is saying 85% of the guns that they find at these cartel crime scenes come from the United States. That's the United States saying it itself. So it's going to be interesting, the defense we hear from these gun makers, if it does proceed to that next step.
Yeah, I mean, have the gun manufacturers responded thus far?
Well, they did try to get this lawsuit thrown out in the first place. As you mentioned, the appellate court is allowing it to go forward. But right now, the manufacturers, they have until April to respond, to decide if they want to present this to the Supreme Court and ask the Supreme Court to weigh in on this. And so the ball is really in their court right now. That's basically what we're waiting for from them, aside from any comment they would like to give us on this case. But as of right now, that's where things stand. Will this go to the Supreme Court? And if that does happen, you can just imagine how much of a delay that will be in the process.
Yeah. And in your reporting, you also touched on and looked at something that's known as Project Thor, right? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, this is really fascinating, Ellison. It's in 2018, there was about a 3-year project, Project Thor, with intelligence agencies in the United States, led by the ATF, who were going against gun traffickers, but doing it with intelligence. Instead of just seizing guns at the border, they were actually going after trying to stop this at the source. We spoke to former ATF agent Chris Demline. He was involved in this, and he sort of described it as Amazon for illegal guns in Mexico, where they would basically call and ask someone in the United States to purchase a gun. They would then give it to someone who would transport it to Mexico. And within just a span of days or weeks, those guns would be arriving in Mexico. So something that there was a lot of concern about. That project has actually since ended, but the intelligence that they gained and what they learned about this sort of a phone tree is another way it's been described, it's really a revelation for how these guns are able to move.
Yeah, really interesting reporting. Stephen Romo, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Almost a dozen countries, including the U.S., have suspended funding to a UN agency following Israel's accusation that 12 of its staffers might have participated in the October 7th terror attack. And now Israel faces an accusation of its own, using hunger as a weapon of war. NBC News senior investigative and legal correspondent Cynthia McFadden has this report.
The World Food Program now warning the risk of famine in Gaza is increasing every single day. The head of the UN's emergency relief agrees and says people in Gaza face the highest levels of food insecurity ever recorded. And Human Rights Watch accusing Israel of using starvation as a weapon of war in violation of the international rules of war. Gazans jumping on aid trucks to get any food they can for themselves and their children.
We are dying of hunger.
And flooding the few remaining, barely functioning hospitals with cases of serious malnutrition. Hospital workers facing the grim reality that sometimes they don't have food to give them or themselves.
What else is left when there are homeless children, no schools, no education, no food, nothing? What else is left?
We have hunger, we have starvation in some places, and the clock is ticking towards famine.
One IDF colonel pointing the blame at aid organizations for people not getting enough food, telling the Times of Israel there is no food shortage in Gaza. As of now, around 200 trucks of humanitarian aid carrying food, water, and medical supplies are getting into Gaza every day. While that may sound like a lot, the UN says 500 trucks were going in daily before the war. It's certainly not the first time, even in recent conflicts, that a government has been accused of starving people to win military goals.
Starvation has been used as a military tactic going all the way back to ancient times.
Romans used starvation to defeat and destroy Carthage in 146 BC. In the United States Civil War, President Lincoln signed the Lieber Code, which instructed Union soldiers to, quote, starve the hostile belligerent, armed or unarmed. And Adolf Hitler's so-called hunger plan starved millions of people in the Soviet Union during World War II. But it wasn't until 2018 that the UN Security Council unanimously and strongly condemned the use of starvation as a tactic of war because of the devastating impact it has on civilians. Of course, many factors can disrupt the food supply to populations, and yet Ukraine, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Yemen, Syria are all facing hunger crises in the middle of conflict. Alex Duvall has studied international famine for 4 decades.
Markets are disrupted, trade is disrupted, food production is disrupted. But where we see real risk of famine is where hunger is deliberately used as a weapon of war.
And Duvall says the concentration of food insecurity in Gaza is the worst in the last 75 years.
There is no instance since World War II that compares with Gaza. There are instances that are bigger in terms of affecting much more people, much more protracted, and therefore killing larger numbers. None of them have inflicted the same level of destruction and brought about the same level of risk of mass death from starvation as the current crisis in Gaza.
UNICEF says the war is damaging and destroying access to clean water, too. Cases of diarrhea among children there skyrocketing because of this. The reality on the ground looks like this. Desperate parents spending days looking for milk for their newborn.
I don't know how he can bear this weather or the living conditions. There's no milk, no water.
And hope, too, now in short supply.
Our thanks to Cynthia McFadden for that report. Still ahead after the break, we will tell you more about that Toyota recall. It's affecting over 50,000 cars in the U.S. And we have more on that scary boat incident in Cancun. It took the lives of 4 tourists. All of that is coming up, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. The Department of Justice is investigating Representative Cori Bush's campaign. They're looking into her campaign's use of security funds. The progressive Democrat, she has denied any wrongdoing in a statement, and she says that her campaign is cooperating with authorities. Team USA has officially won gold in the figure skating team event at the 2022 Winter Olympics. An international court disqualified the Russian skater that originally won gold, Kamila Valieva, yesterday. She had tested positive for banned drugs while she was competing in the games. The U.S. Olympic Committee got the news overnight. No word yet on whether or not they will have any sort of medal ceremony. Toyota is recalling 50,000 cars in the U.S., and they are telling drivers, get your cars repaired now. That's because of an airbag issue that could cause an explosion and potentially kill drivers. At least 30 people have been killed worldwide since 2009 by the Takata inflators. The recall includes some older Corolla and RAV4 models from the early 2000s. UPS today announced it's laying off 12,000 people. The company says the cuts will save them $1 billion in costs. UPS fell short of Wall Street revenue estimates this week, reporting some drops in shipping volume from last quarter. And Broadway icon Chita Rivera died today after a brief illness. The 3-time Tony winner starred in shows like West Side Story and Bye Bye Birdie, thrilling audiences for decades. She was 91 years old. At least 4 Mexican tourists have died after the boat they were on capsized off the coast of Cancun. The boat was carrying 19 people in all, including 2 crew members. Most of the passengers were rescued by the Mexican Navy, local police, and civil defense agencies, and some were then transported to the hospital by ambulance. The captain of the boat survived and was taken into custody. Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky. Morgan, what do we know at this point?
Yeah, Allison, a lot of unanswered questions right now. We do know that at least the captain has been detained to try to learn more about how this horrific tragedy took place on what typically is an incredibly routine water crossing from the city of Cancun to Isla Mujeres, which is a popular island destination just off the coast. This ride typically takes about 15 minutes. And according to Mexican authorities, this vessel had made its way there yesterday evening with 2 crew and 17 Mexican national tourists, and they were on their return trip late last night when something went horribly wrong. We do know that local media had reported the seas were choppy, that high winds had been reported. But one of the key issues in this ongoing investigation, Allison, is what was the legal limit capacity-wise for this vessel? We know that there were 19 people on board. If that limit was any lower, it could certainly have contributed to how this vessel went down, killing 4 people on board. We do know that rescuers were dispatched relatively immediately, able to pull those passengers from the water. Some of them were treated at a nearby hospital, but as of right now, the exact cause for why this happened still unknown, still very much under investigation. Elson?
Morgan, as we wait for more information on that incident, I understand you're also following another incident, this one off the coast of Mexico involving some kayakers. What happened there?
Yeah, this just an incredible story of right place, right time. These 2 men that were spotted on board a kayak had actually been on board an entirely different vessel that then went down. Fortunately for them, they did have that kayak close by. They used it as a lifeboat of sorts, and they just happened to cross paths with a Carnival Cruise Line that had departed from Texas and was on its way to port in Honduras when they happened to spot that brightly colored kayak in the Gulf of Mexico. The good news to report tonight, those 2 men expected to make full recoveries, no serious injuries. But had they been just a short distance off of that cruise ship line, they could very well still be stranded out at sea. Elson?
Wow. Morgan Chesky, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Okay, before we go, it is time for the future of everything. Implanted brain chips. It sounds like something out of the Matrix or Terminator, right? Well, thanks to Elon Musk's company, Neuralink, it's now a reality. That's coming after the break. Stay tuned. Now for the future of everything, and something that sounds straight out of a science fiction movie. We're talking about brain implants. It's technology that is promising to do everything from cure spinal cord injuries to restore people's vision. And now a startup that's owned by Elon Musk just announced its first surgery performed on a human. NBC News correspondent Emily Ikeda explains how this technology works.
A brain chip has been successfully implanted in a human, according to Elon Musk. The tech titan sharing a big breakthrough from his brain science startup company, Neuralink, saying it has implanted a device in a human for the first time, a possible step toward a product that Musk says enables control of your phone or computer and through them almost any device just by thinking.
Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts.
Musk posting Monday, the first human received an implant from Neuralink yesterday and is recovering well. The initial results, he added, showed promising neuron spike detection. But Musk gave no additional details about the procedure, the patient, or the device the company implanted. Musk writing initial users will be those who have lost the use of their limbs, discussing his vision for Neuralink back in 2019.
This, I think, has a very good purpose, which is to cure important diseases. And ultimately to help secure humanity's future as a civilization.
For decades, scientists have worked on similar ideas for brain-computer interfaces. But for many, a microchip in the brain feels like something out of a movie. Like 2015's Kingsman: The Secret Service, where Samuel L. Jackson plays an eccentric billionaire who tries to control the world using neural implants.
Mankind is the virus, and I'm the cure.
As science fiction gets closer to reality, Musk is hoping a groundbreaking experimental device can help transform everyday lives. Emily Ikeda, NBC News.
Joining me now is Dr. Marco Baptista. He is the Chief Scientific Officer for the Reeve Foundation, an organization with the mission to cure spinal cord injuries and paralysis. Doctor, thank you so much for being with us. This is such an interesting discussion, and we're so glad to have your expertise. I want to start by showing a clip of a Neuralink demo that was showing how it worked in trials that involved monkeys. Let's watch.
To control his paddle, on the right side of the screen, Pager simply thinks about moving his hand up or down. We've removed the joystick altogether. It's not magic. The reason Neuralink works is because it's recording and decoding electrical signals from the brain.
So when you see that potential, and there's the one side of things where people can just say, oh, that's cool, looks fun, and then there's this other reality of, okay, no, this could actually fundamentally help people and alter the way that they are able to exist in this world. Talk to us about what this type of technology means for the work you do at the Reeve Foundation.
Yeah, we believe that this is a revolution in the science and the technology and can have a lot of implications for the paralysis community. And I think that demonstration that was just shown really captures all the elements of a brain-computer interface that we think can be translated into helping individuals that are experiencing paralysis. So very exciting times.
The brain-computer interface technology that you just mentioned, it's an industry, right? And it's come quite a long way. There are multiple companies that are working on human trials, not just Neuralink and Elon Musk. Do you think there is a future, an immediate future, one that is kind of around the corner, where BCIs are going to be readily available to people who need them?
Yeah, I do. I think normally device development and this type of technology can take a long time for it to get translated and be seen as a treatment for individuals. And the Reeve Foundation is doing everything we can to try to accelerate this type of research. So there's a very collaborative community with a lot of other companies that are involved, for example, companies like Synchron and Onward Medical. And we're here to really act as a neutral convener and to speed up a process that sometimes takes a long time. So we're really trying to accelerate the research so that it will translate into treatments for individuals.
You know, some people might be aware of something like a cochlear implant and say, okay, that's brain surgery, and I'm oversimplifying this, but that is brain surgery that then changes something where people who aren't able to hear can possibly get some of their hearing back. And that's a surgery that has been around for long enough that most people are aware of it, right? When we're talking about BCI technology and just the concept of putting some sort of chip in your brain, that sounds foreign to a lot of people. How do you describe it, and what is your hope for the future of BCI technology?
Yeah, I think the best way to describe it is really this next generation of how we're interacting with devices and interacting with this type of technology, where thought alone can control the devices and can control movement. We think there's a lot of implications, and we're very optimistic, especially since there are so many companies that have diverse approaches, unique approaches in doing this type of device technology, and we're here to try to help with the collaboration of these different companies. So it's very exciting times.
We are excited to continue following you and the Reeve Foundation's work. Thank you so much, Dr. Baptista. We appreciate it. And thank you at home. That does it for us tonight. I'm Ellison Barber. We will see you tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.